Before I go into this bridge, it'd be great to go to the very beginning. Why did I do that? The choice I made for that particular bridge. So it helps to start from the beginning. I'll try to make this a short video. If it's not, well, hopefully you have a good seat and have a good drink and enjoy. So it all started here, the helix, which is finally completed. The helix is actually 5 level, and I started on the outside finishing touch. As you can see, I still have to sand and fill. It's totally workable, it's functional, and it's slightly bigger than I thought. As you can see, it's 5 levels, and each levels is more than 4 pieces of flex track. So 4 pieces, that's 3 feet a pop, so that's 12 feet per level times 5, so that's 60 real feet to go up from staging underneath, which is Quebec City or Montreal depending, and to go on top. So that was a pretty big endeavor, and now it's complete, functional. I came to the top and I had to decide where exactly it would go on the peninsula, and that's where the story begins. So when I finished the helix on top, I came to the peninsula to your left, and the peninsula had nothing on it except double tracks, and I chose to change it. The helix was fun to build. I still need to put some of the support for the top of the helix to create a scenic area, but that's for later. And of course, like anything I do, I'm not too sure how to do it. I'm not extremely good at what I do, but I do it anyways. And then I ran out of wood, ran out of track, so I had to go to the store and pick up some more to finish it. But it was done ahead of schedule, which I'm happy. Because that was a big project, I decided to tackle another one. Go figure. So the bridge, the section you can see here, it's not complete yet. The tracks will be the last thing I put in because I know they fit, it works. So I started carving out this side of the peninsula, which again, there was not much going on. On the other side of the peninsula, it's Dave Louisville, for those of you who follow these videos. And this one, I decided to build a bridge. I wasn't too sure, but a signature bridge was what I was looking for. So I chose to make something similar, or actually is the Victoria Bridge that you see in Montreal. And I condensed it because from the approach to the bridge here to the other end is 7.5 feet long. So it's pretty long. The bridge is not 7 feet, but the whole area it's over 7 feet long. So let's take a look at how I did that. And during editing, I might actually put pictures of prototype pictures about that bridge. Surprisingly enough, on YouTube and on my Facebook page, there's at least 4 of you guys that actually knew what I was building with the very few pieces installed at that time. So that's pretty cool. So let's take a look. So here we see the very beginning of Victoria Bridge. To the right, that would be the entrance into Montreal. So that'd be the south shore of Montreal. And where the bridge is, it's slightly to the right, is Pointe Saint-Charles. Famous for the CN shops that redid the GP9 switcher, the 1200s, the MLWs, and of course the caboose. So as we're going to the left slowly here, we see the actual bridge. I'll come back to that slightly more detail. And to the left we see the beginning of the lift section of the Saint-Lambert locks. So let's talk about that really quickly. I'll come back how I did the water as well. So the Victoria Bridge. what is the Victoria Bridge? Well, that's a very good question. So I got some facts about this bridge from my hometown. It was called for the longest time the eighth wonder of the world. There's 24 piers that the bridge rests on top. There's over 1.5 million rivets, and it's 2.8 kilometers long. The weight, it's over 9,000 tons, and it took 5 years to build with over 3,000 workers. Like I said, during the editing of this video, I might actually put some real picture. I don't know yet. So, what was the genesis of that bridge that I'm doing? And that's obviously a Walters kit, double track truss bridge, pretty much like the original. So in 1854, the Grand Trunk started the construction of Victoria Bridge. 1854. You have to think about that for a second. This bridge, the piers, and the whole engineering behind it is older than Canada. That bridge was opened in 1859 just for trains, and it was the first bridge to cross the St. Lawrence River from the shore of Saint Lambert to the island of Montreal. And it cost at the time $7 million, and it was a tubular bridge. It rests on masonry piers. Those are hand-cut stone taken from the local quarry, and they haven't changed since. So those are original from 1859. Imagine that. So they built this bridge without electricity, steam, or they started to have steam engine, no gasoline engine, no pocket calculator, no computers, basic math and manpower. That's it. They had to dig 20 meters from the bottom to the bottom of the St. Lawrence River, and put all those stones by hand. That's quite the feat as far as I'm. Like I said, it's almost 2 miles long. It's at that time it was the longest railroad bridge in the world. In the 1870s, because it was tubular, it wasn't a truss bridge, they started to have problems when they switched to coal. You can imagine going to a 2 mile long bridge that's tubular, like a tunnel, having coal-fired steam engine. So that caused a problem, so that's when they decided to change to what we have today, the truss bridge as we're looking at right now. At that time they made it wider, heavier, so it could carry more traffic, so it went double track. And also on either side of the bridge, they made an actual extension. So on one side they could have a tramway, and the other side was pedestrian and horse-draw carts that could actually go through it. So basically it's the genesis of intermodal. Because today as it exists, the main bridge is for trains, the side is for automobiles only, no motorcycle, no bicycle, no pedestrian, no trucks. And underneath it's the St. Lawrence Seaway, it's for ships. On the left hand side, which I'm going next, during the 50s they decided to make the lift bridge to allow big ships to go through. So that's what I try to represent. And of course, because it's 2 miles long, there's no way this could have fit into any layout. Well, not my layout anyways. I would have needed roughly 30 to 40 feet long peninsula and 23 kits, Walter kits, to make it happen. Imagine the cost and the logistics. I'm patient, but not that patient, and I'm not very skilled, so that's it. That's what you're looking at. So we can see the actual piers that I tried to represent. So the inside, it's foam, pink foam, and this is just a plastic sheeting that represent rocks that I cut and glue, and then glue everything to the masonite, and then did the water afterwards. The kit, I did one, the Walters kit here. and the one to the left I got it used for 20 bucks or so. So I had to modify them and paint them, prime them, and now they're ready for their the actual weathering and the detail. But there's more to it than that. So that's what we're looking at. The backdrop is temporary. I'll come back to that shortly. And here we go to the Saint Lambert locks. And this is the St. Lawrence Seaway. It's a pretty big system that they have. The engineering behind it in the 50s, again, it's pretty amazing as far as I'm concerned. And I made this out of styrene. So even the camera can't get all of it because it's pretty tall. It's over 14 inches tall, the actual lift. And it goes close to the end where the scenic divider stops. And this is just the very beginning. So I put the IQ boxcar just to give an idea, and there's also the backdrop we can see of the other. There's 2 locks, and there's 2 lift bridge, 2 allowed vehicular traffic and train traffic to continue, even if this lift portion is up, to allow ships to go in. The other one is closed, so they just go around. It's like a spur almost. And when the other one is up, this one goes down and it allows traffic to go through. It's pretty interesting bridge. So again, that's just a segment, just the very beginning. I spent a lot of time making the piers, the concrete abutment at the proper height, and what would be here the Saint Lambert locks. So the Saint Lambert locks, why did they decide to do this? In the 50s, because this used to be the truss bridge they removed, to install this, to build it on the spot, is to allow ships to go from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Great Lakes. Prior to that, there was no access, because on the St. Lawrence, there's rapids. It's not very deep, about 20 meters deep, the deepest, and the elevation from Lake Huron, Lake Superior, Lake Ontario, to this area here, the elevation is close to 600 feet. So here it's pretty much the same level as the ocean, but once you go to those locks, you have to go to many locks. There's over a dozen of them, and at the time they did this in '59, it cost over $500 million. You can imagine that. And that's the purpose, because on a good year or a bad year, the average is over 3,000 ships for over 50 countries use the St. Lawrence Seaway and the St. Lambert locks to go to all those other places, all the way to Thunder Bay and all the way to Chicago, Milwaukee, anywhere in the States. So basically they bypass the Niagara Falls to go to all those areas. What else we're talking about here? That's pretty much it for the because history. This bridge, in a sense, is the very first intermodal bridge. You got double tracks here. This section goes up and down to allow the ship go through, and this is where the vehicle, the cars and SUVs nowadays and pickup trucks, that's where they drive on either side. So this way to go towards Montreal, and this way coming back from Montreal to go to Saint-Lambert-Longueuil or connect to Highway 132, which is right at the beginning, right here. I just started. So still a long ways to go, made of styrene, obviously. At some point I'll get the appropriate backdrop to put there. So I'm just going to look under Google Maps, I suppose. So I had the original backdrop in the back with the forest, and I couldn't find any that represent water or the approach to the bridge. So basically I used some light blue and a paintbrush under the suggestion of my wife, and start to change the backdrop for now anyways. Once I get the proper one, I'll install it, but at least I'm not stuck waiting for a part and having the whole project stand still. So that's what we're looking at. That's what I'm doing right now. Like, I didn't have enough with the Helix as far as a project, a big project. I started this one as well. Live and don't learn. That's me. We can see the axis right here that goes into a loop and comes back to go on top of the bridge. That's the axis for maintenance, and there's also an actual control, kind of a control tower, but for ships. We got the Saint Lambert locks, so that's a seaway that I made slightly lower than the St. Lawrence River to represent the change of water, because this is over, what is it, it's 15 meters or 15 feet, 20 feet deep when they empty this. When I was looking at the stats, it's 91,000 liters per minute that it takes down or fill to make the proper height to go to the next level. Again, I might during editing put some pictures or diagram that explain better than the way I babble on and on. In the background, we can see the actual picture of the other locks. There's two, right? So there's two lift bridge. And it would look something similar to this. I'll lower the camera, but it doesn't line up yet. So I'm just playing with it. Since I'm at the very beginning of making this bridge, which requires a lot of cutting and sanding and test fitting and changing stuff, just like the Helix, with all the wood, the sanding the wood, the gluing, the screwing together, putting the tracks, removing everything, adjusting, putting it back. It's exactly the same thing. Geez, I thought I'd get a break, but I guess not. So this is the second lock. Okay, at Saint Lambert. It's pretty far and deep as well, and it gives you some details of where I am right now. Again, this is all. These are Plastruck, if I'm not mistaken. These are a styrene sheet that I had. This screen right here is, well, I'll show you. This is it. What you have in your windows. It's plastic. So it liquid cement. It works really nicely, and it can be painted, which I will do. Still have lots to do, but it's taking shape. After carving out roughly 2.5 inches worth of foam, which the peninsula was made of, where the track used to be, and it was rough tin, so that took a while. I did 6 feet worth of carving-ish. I kept some of it. I had to sand it down, lower it, and I kept the foam here, so I cut just around it, and then I put masonite and I weathered it. I painted, I think, 3 coats worth of paint, and then kind of weather it because I know I wouldn't have access later. And did the same thing for this, for the locks, for the actual wall of the seaway. And then I painted the water. I use acrylic paints for that. And then I put on this one, I believe it was 3 coats worth of water material, which in my case I use Mod Podge. I'll come back to that shortly. And then I spray paint with primer the actual deck of the lift section right here, and all the detail. Those are all styrene sheets, styrene tubing that I cut, sanded, test fitted, and glue it. Man, I didn't like that very much, but it turned out okay. And then I finished the base, but it goes much higher than that. Hold on. So it's not done yet, because on top it goes higher with the actual mechanism on either side, the system of gearing and etc. that goes on top, and plus the actual truss that I still have to make for these guys. And again, it's highly compressed. It's roughly 90% compressed compared to the real one. Again, like I said, the other one's 2 miles long, and this one is from both approaches, from both end of the bridge, it's 7.5 feet. So you can imagine how much compression it took. But everything is handmade, hand cut. I didn't see any blueprints. I didn't follow anything. I just looked at a picture and made it fit for the space that I have. And that's pretty much where I am right now. Somebody mentioned that should I make this bridge functional, and it would add to operations for sure. Having a switch with a timer, with the actual lights flashing, because there's a ship coming in. As you can see in the picture in the back, there was a ship there waiting to go through. The gate goes down, and the lift bridge, this part here, just rises up all the way up, and then you have to wait to the pretend ship to go through, and then it goes all the way down, locks into place. Excuse me. So I thought that was a good idea at first. Great idea. But contrary to some people that I know that have lots of talents and a lot of skills, that means cutting into the deck right here, putting the cables on the end of the lift bridge to an electric motor to the actual system of gear. As you can see in the background, those are kind of the pulleys, if you like, and this is the actual place where they have the motor. There's concrete blocks on either side for counterweights that allow this to go up and down, and then to make it that it stops on top and descend again, and that the track would line up perfectly every single time. Nothing is impossible, except I know my limitation. That's beyond what I can do. So I kept it simple. I like that. Keep things simple. That's me. Live and don't learn, and keep it simple. And once I do a project, I don't super over analyze it. I just go for it. And once I'm going for it, I'm committed. I have to finish it. However, since I like things simple, for this, I just bring it to the bench work to work. So it's pretty straightforward. I just lift it up, just like this. And it still allows me to work on the deck where the car will be, and you still need to paint that, add detail, install the tracks, put the feeders in, all that good stuff. So I made it so until I'm ready, till it's ready to glue down, I can lift it, bring it to the bench, and work. And I still have lots of work to do on this one plus the top. Yes, the water. How do I do the water? Well, I'll show you. No big secret there. Once it's painted, okay, can you see that? Yeah, okay, good. What do I use for paint, you say? Well, that's very straightforward again. My two favorite paints for everything, basically. This guy and this guy. And I just mixed it. And sometimes I add a bit of blue, dark blue. Sometimes a bit of dark black. And this is Masonite hardboard. That's all it is. So I just paint it once I'm happy with the color. And then I take this and mix it with this guy with a bit of water and paint it with a paintbrush. Straightforward. There you go. Once it's dry, I seal it, or I put the very first coat of, let's take a look, my other favorite product, Mod Podge. And I use my other favorite product, a paintbrush. Keep it simple. So there you go. That's my water. So I do a first coat, and a first coat is probably the most important one. That's why I zoomed in into the Saint Lambert locks right here. Why is it important? Well, there's no bubbles. There's no white stream. And I guess it depends on the one you buy, because I had a previous one that left a lot of bubbles, but that's me. I'm sure it's my fault. And then I got this guy. I bought another one, Walmart, cheap, and the paintbrush, dollar store, again, cheap, but this one is, contrary to the other one, it's very, very soft. So what I do, I just put a little bit, drag it, make sure there's no bubble. And you have to be patient to do that. I have no patience either, so I guess this hobby is trying to teach me a few things. I don't know what yet, but anyways. And I just put it in. Not like, I don't do a big streak, I just do little ones. To make a little bit of three-dimensional aspect or texture to it. Then I let it dry. When you know it's dry, when it's transparent and touch, it's not sticky. And then I made another layer. I'll try to, not sure if that's going to show. Let's give it a try, shall we? To make some texture as in wave. Of course, this being the lock, the St. Lawrence Seaway, the level of texture is minimal unless there's a lot of wind or there's a lot of ships or movement. I don't know if you can see it. It's not always the best with a camera like this. I'll try another angle. Yeah, like this. So I hope it's coming out. So, and then when it's dry, I do a second coat. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. It's so tedious. Then I let it actually dry. Make sure there's no bubble. When I see bubble, I just drag them with the actual paintbrush and continue on until there's none left. And then I let it dry. And then I look at the texture. Is it starting to look like waves or water that's not still? Because it's not still. Even if you look Google Map, you'll notice that the actual water is moving or there's movement. This is not an aquarium inside the house somewhere that's no movement. And I put some on the side because it would splash with the wave. But once I weather this side here with different color of concrete and maybe a very light green because of the, you know, they lower the water, they pump it up back and forth like this, 3,000 ships a year. That's over close to 100 ships a day. There's a lot of movement. And that's it. So I did 3 coats, and when it looked pretty decent to me, that's when I stopped. Exactly the same thing with the piers. The actual concrete abutment that they built on the real one, use masonite or artboard on either side, and paint them with, well, again, woodland scenic concrete. And I think I gave it 3 coats. It's kind of it's water based actually. I'm talking about this. What's this? So I had to cut it, sand it, put it into position. All right. I use that for the decking as well of the bridge. And when it started to look decent with a bit of wash on it, I stop. That's the transition between the 2 bridge. So those 2 are the Walter double track truss bridge. I didn't modernize it because I don't have double stacks and it's not my era. There is piggybacks and there is containers, but not double stacks, so I don't care. And I had to fix this guy because it was used. After I fixed it, I spray painted with primer and then black paint. Even though the bridge nowadays is no longer black, CN does spray the side with the gray and greenish color. I think it's anti-corrosion, and the rest is pretty weathered. That goes back to CN when it was part of the government, a crown corporation owned by all Canadians. CN really did take care of its infrastructure, but as it became a private company, it was privatized. They seem to be not as keen to repaint a bridge. I can understand it costs a lot of money, but anyways. So I'll weather it. Also put screening inside, because inside the bridge, the real bridge, there's some decking as well. It's wood, because when they have to stop to do anything for the train, it could be a safety issues. They have to walk, and it's a 2 kilometer long walk, so they're not going to risk it. And here, because it's condensed, there's a road right here that goes underneath the bridge. The original piers behind that concrete ones, I didn't bother doing it. And there's another one here, but it's too wide, so I just kept this one that goes straight to Pointe Saint Charles shops in a roundabout ways. And the actual vehicle traffic will exit here, and it lowers itself and it goes into Montreal. It's the 112 number of the highway. For the other traffic, it's together with this road, but it goes underneath and then it turns left. And when you're driving, you have a really good view of Pointe Saint Charles and the Via Rail maintenance department in Montreal, and then you go to this side, which I will do as well, right? So the important thing was to line everything up, tracks, the actual roadbed, the bridge, the backdrop, do the water, all the stuff that don't need it to be, that can be permanent before I start actually doing the rest. So that's what it looks like at this point. So it is a signature piece as far as the area that I model. Again, it's, if you look at all my videos, you'll know Quebec City to Montreal, and this is the part where you're coming. If you're going to the right, you're going to Montreal, which would eventually branch off. If you're going left, the tracks, I mean, if you're going left, you're going to Tachereau Yard and then eventually Toronto. If it goes right, you go to Montreal Central Station, Place Bonaventure, which is the helix in my case. Again, 5 levels, so you exit the bridge. You can see part of the helix right there. So once you're going to the helix, like I was saying, 5 level, you're going to 60 feet, more than 60 feet of turning, and then eventually you end up underneath in the staging area. There's 2 staging. This side here is Montreal. The other side, where the white part is, that's Quebec City. Okay. Of course, I'll have to redo the fascia, to repaint it, patch it, etc. And if you come down to the layout, once this is more advanced, of course, for the actual lift bridge is more complete, more details. It's actually weathered. You'll know where you fit. Everything is to make it fit in the layout. So that was part 2 of what I'm doing right now. The actual Victoria Bridge with the lift section of Saint Lambert Locks. Part 3 would be, or will be, when all the details are done as far as the vehicular traffic on either side. The track is installed, it's weathered, the top of the lift bridge is complete, the detail are complete. Then there's going to be more greenery because there is some grass and trees growing in this area. Even in the past, in the 50s, they started to have gravel and grass growing, some trees in the background. That's why I left them there. And even on this one, you can still see the details that exist today as far as scenery is concerned, because it's a pretty extensive area. Here should give you an idea. You can see the greenery, the trees, the locks. That's the second locks in the background. The flyover, if you want to call it this way, for the trains and the cars when the ships are going through. So I'll give it that general feel, and it should be pretty interesting. And then when that's done, whenever that is done, I can finish off the helix as far as painting, sanding. Like, I haven't done enough of that in the last 2 months. And that's it. So it's back from the bench. And some painting done, some primer paint. So that's how it looks as of now. And from the bottom, the foundation, the concrete foundation, the bridge is roughly 15.5 inches tall by 17 inches wide. And I have inserted some more detail, of course, and that's been quite the construction project, more than I thought. So there's slightly more detail into it, more, I don't know what you call that, cross members, metal lattice. I'm not too sure actually what's the proper English name for these things, but that's what we're looking at now. And plus the ladder cage on the back and the top where the gearing, the wheels and the machinery, the whole mechanism connects to the lift bridge. I hope my hand is steady here. It's a pretty big piece. By the time this is all done, whenever that is, what is this, part 3? Anyways, and it should be quite, has quite an impact, actually quite interesting. So I did put the, just loosely, the deck plates where the tracks will be, need to be cut and paint. And of course we can see slightly more metal lattice work from this angle. Doesn't look like it, but that's quite time consuming to do. to cut all those strips and sand and fit and make them all fall into place. And again, I'm just using a picture, and then it's highly compressed to make it fit. So this is the lift span, the bridge at this point. There's still a lot more to put on top, and then when that is done, I can start some weathering. And I've been asked by somebody offline if this was going to be operational. You know what? I don't think so. Like I said in my previous video, I don't have the skill set, and I'm not too keen on the complexity. So that's what it looks like at the moment. But you know what? I'll try to do a shorter video and go on with the next item of business before I bring this back to the bench work. So again, I'm trying not to bore you to pieces here, or bore you to tears actually here, but that's what it looks like. And there's so much more intricate detail to put in. When I look at the prototype pictures, it's just like I'll have to say stop pretty soon, because I can go on and on and on and on and adding it, but for the most part you won't be able to see it anyhow. Okay, so what else is going on at the bridge? Well, let's take a look. And for the color, that's very similar to the actual prototype. I use this guy here. It's Trimclad primer, so it works out pretty good. Depending on the time that the original picture was taken, including mine that I use for references, it's either light gray like this, light gray with rust and green, faded green, especially on the bottom, this part right here. So there's a test fitting of the decking at this point. The deck has these pieces of wood sitting on top of the metal and the real one, and of course it needs to be painted and cut to fit. That's going to be the next step with the extension for the span. Now, before I bring the lift bridge back to the bench and do some work on it, I was looking at the water. The water on the actual locks is good. I'm happy with that. However, here I think I can get away with one more layer. I think it's going to look much better. So what I'm going to do before the bridge are glued into place is add another layer of water. So I'll take this guy out, put it on top of the other one, clear up all those little details for the extension, and just go add another layer. Like I said before, I use a Mod Podge and a very nice brush, and just take a little bit and just start by making some wave, something like this, and making sure to remove any bubbles. That's going to dry transparent anyways. So that's what we're planning to do. So this is what it looks like so far. Still has a ways to go. Mod Podge is a water-based product, so it's non-toxic, and it's I can clean up the toothbrush. Correction, the toothbrush. Yeah, that'd be good. The paintbrush with water. So it's good. Now I'm just doing some touch-up at this point, getting rid of some of the bubbles. And on the side here, it doesn't really matter, since there'll be some scenery, bushes, tall grass, etc., which to be honest, I just can't wait to do. And this helps because there's already quite a few coats underneath. I think I'm at the third or fourth coat of Mod Podge. So there's texture, so it's easier as you go along. The trick is not to overdo it. So when this is dry, I'll take a look and I'll see how the texture came out. Of course, I can always do touch-ups, so that's not a big deal. And just going to remove some. There's too much here, and it's going to dry transparent, and it's going to reflect the light. So depending where it is exactly, I might put more or less. If you're going to see it, it's the wave or the actual movement of the water will reflect the light. And if I cannot see it because it's too far down or in an area where you really have to bend over and zoom in, then there's no point of doing this with the same amount of time or patience or care. So what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, is if I look across here, you can see the way the light reflects on the texture or the wave. And that one, I know the zoom in the camera is not the best, but that one is pretty good. So I'm not going to touch it. And this is where I am right now. So again, I won't show you. I won't leave the camera running when I'm doing this. I'll bore you to tears, and that would not necessarily be nice. So I'll just keep on going, and we'll be right back. So depending, excuse me, on your environment, this can dry fairly quickly, even though it's recommended 24 hours before you do anything. What I do, I just go back and do some touch-up, and also pick up the bubbles I might have missed. Bubbles, well, they won't look like much if there's a few here and there. It's when there's a big chunk of them, and then it doesn't look quite as good. And at the same time, I can build up the wave as it's drying. And you probably can tell that it's drying pretty good right now. Like I said, I already add a couple layers underneath to help for the texture, so I don't have to spend as much time. It's not as tedious as I like to say, but you have to take your time. This is not something you want to do extremely quickly, because the quicker you do it, the more it's going to show in your result. So you just take your time, go back to it before it's completely dry. Time to time I check, rework the waves, and can't go wrong doing it that way. So this is how I do the water and the wave. And I try many different ways in the past, and I found this one the best because it gives me time to work. It's easy to play with, non-toxic, doesn't run off in every single tiny holes on the layout. I don't have to mix anything. Easy to clean up, easy to remove. If I need to, I can paint it. I can insert all kind of scenery like tall grass if I was going to do a swamp or a small lake. So it's my favorite method. Like, to each his own, obviously, and there's various ways of doing it, but for me, that's what works the best. So it's always good to experiment on a little piece at a time, just to see what works for you and what technique you should use. But nothing venture, nothing gain. All right. Okay, so one side is done. I think the key here is to know when to stop, for me anyways, because I'll keep playing with this and I might actually make it worse. So it looks good so far. As it dries, it'll become transparent, and I'll see where I need to go back and do some touch-up if that's what. Most of the time I don't. And like I said, I just let it dry. Usually overnight, but sometimes it's quicker. But as long as it's tacky, I'm not going to do anything else. So we'll put the bridge back on in the meantime. And the reason why I'm doing this is because there's another bridge right here, and I still need to do this segment. So I'll remove this one because this one is not glue either. Put it back here. and do the exact same thing. And again, I'll spare you the detail of what I'm doing because it can be pretty boring at this point. I think so anyways. I don't know. So this side of the bridge, or the other bridge, is complete. So I did some touch-up, and that is that for the water. Of course, I'll need to bring those two bridges to the benchwork to do the roadways on either side. Do some weathering while I'm at it, and then move forward. So I got 3 bridges basically to bring to the bench and work on. Before I do that, and before I move forward with the roadway and more detail on the actual lift bridge, I'll start the scenery here a little bit, just to break the actual process a little bit. So it's a bit of gravel, a bit of ground foam for now. Later I'll put some grass, wild grass, but there's not much there, just enough. So I'll work on that as well. So let's move on to the next, but water's starting to look good. And then the bridge is getting pretty decent. Okay, let's move on to the next step. As the water is drying, and it's getting there pretty good, I'll start on the bit of the grass and the gravel that's around this area. Again, it's a bit of freelancing. I'm not trying to make it exactly the same, but still close enough. So the next step after putting this on the white glue will be to spray it and make a mix of 50-50 white glue and water. So I'll move on to this step, probably add a little bit more at other places, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so the first layer is in. A bit of gravel, a bit of ground foam, like grass basically. Well, let me show you with blended turf and some medium ballast basically. So we'll let it dry, and then we'll clean up the little mess that it made, and we'll start on the static grass once it's all dry. Okay, so the base, the foundation for the upcoming scenery is in place. So we have to let it dry at this point, set it slightly more, and the key here is to resist the temptation to actually make touch-ups or to clean it up. So it's way easier when it's dry, and then you can vacuum the excess, just scratch it a little bit and it'll come off. So no touching at this point. I can just remove the dam. Nothing's going to leak. Slightly more on this side. Again, it's for the foundation of the bushes, tall grass, etc. that will go there. And the water looks pretty decent and dry. I know it doesn't look that much on the camera, but looking at it from my perspective, I think it came out pretty good. Nothing is perfect, of course, so I took the advantage of doing the water to remove the bridge, bring them to the bench, and start on the segment where will be the roadway. So it's still a ways to go, but it's starting to look like something. So that's where I am at this point. Slightly more to do, like fixing the imperfection, gluing more pieces, sanding more pieces, and then closing it up meaning by that to actually glue the bridge, put the track, etc. So there's still a bit to do, of course, but it's starting to come together. So I'm pretty happy about that. There's still, like I said, there's still lots to do. This is becoming a bigger project. All right, I'm back with the latest and greatest with the bridge. Not much has changed on this side. Well, not much has changed. I can see the change, I'm not sure if you can. In any case, I started on the grass and other scenery, and it's pretty fresh at this point. And here we can see the approach to the bridge. I haven't done the highway yet, that's coming. Remove the trees to the left because there's going to be a highway a bit further around here, an overpass that will cut across. Put the ballast, waiting to put the weathering or painting the rails and the ties. And moving to this end, here's the lift bridge with not much change into it. The color has remained the same. There'll be a light weathering as soon as I'm done the detail, the mechanism on top, which I haven't done at this point. However, the rest is moving pretty good actually, and as some of you may have seen, trains are working. I tried the running some trains after soldering the rails and putting the joiners, the feeders I should say, and it's doing pretty good actually. So put some cars to get the feel for it, and let's take a look. Also started to fill in the fascia for the joint. Hide the joint and then I'll paint it. Not much has changed at Saint Albert Locks. The temporary backdrop is still in place, and weather the tracks around this area. I'm not sure if it's going to show. Let's give it a try like this. So this part is actually done. Wow, one part is done. The lift bridge has different color in real life, but I think I'll keep it that way. I'll tone it down a little bit. For the greenery, as you can tell, I've started putting some bushes and some grass on that corner right there. Water, I've not touched it because I'm pretty satisfied the way it came out. Start the weathering on the bridge and put the 2 layers of green at this point. The green is for anti-corrosion, where the vehicles are going, and that's what it looks like at this point. A little bit of copy of what's going on in real life. I finished the road. I still have to put the lines and add more greenery, but the road is done around this area. I put a backdrop building. For now it's temporary. It's the wrong size anyways, just to give the feel of the area behind the road, which is Pointe Saint-Charles. Let's take a look at the road here. It's painted, glue into place, and that's for the approach or the exit of the bridge going into the island of Montreal. And on the other side, which is not complete yet, that's when you exit to go to the South Shore, Saint-Lambert, Longueuil and beyond. So far it's pretty good actually in the reel. Much better than a video for sure. So let's take a look at some of the weathering. Not sure if it's gonna come up on the video or the quality of it. Let's take a look here. I'm not sure if you can see that. There's a bit of weathering done, and there's so many different color in the real one that I think I'll leave it like that for now. the top anyways. Not sure if that's going to come out, maybe not. So that's where I've been spending my time, is doing a bit of painting, a bit of scenery. The approach to the bridge is pretty far advanced as far as scenery, ballast. All the feeders are in. This extra feeders is for this one that I have to put in. And now we're looking at the approach leaving the helix. So when you leave the helix, well, basically you have a choice to make depending on what GMRI, the software for operation, dictate. But if you're going from Quebec City to Montreal, you'll take the right one here through this guy, right through the backdrop, which will be camouflage anyway, so you won't see it that way. What we can see right now, it's the nose of a GP9 sticking out, coming from Montreal to Quebec City. So that's the way they come in, and down the helix, the five layers of the helix. And if you're going from Montreal to Quebec City, it's going to be either on this guy or this guy. They both go the exact same way to the bridge, with Pointe Saint-Charles in the back. And basically there's two tracks, so that allows meet on the bridge. So at this point, the backdrop, well, I'll work on that when I get to it. We're looking at the St. Lawrence with a 2-span and a lift bridge, and with the various vehicle on it. And that's a big chunk. It's almost 8 feet long total from the approach to the other end, and to Highway 132 if I'm not mistaken, and to the locks. So there's still a lot more details scenery wise, which I enjoy, so that's okay. And a little bit more weathering on the bridge and a lift bridge to actually finish that part. And then weathering the rail, painting the rail as you leave to go to Saint-Hyacinthe, making the overpass, more trees, and that should be it for that project. Was doing the fascia, so still quite a lot, and but I think it's going to turn out to be pretty decent. So as you know, the tracks, the train, everything is operational, so I'll run a train just to get a feel for it and see what it looks like. So again, to recap, overpass to come here, more trees, finish the underpass, the highway, the backdrop, started on the scenery, on the bushes, more painting, more detail, finish the lift bridge, a little bit more weathering, fascia, and this should be completed. Now there's way more project, of course it never ends. However, this one is almost done, so that was a quick update. I hope you enjoyed it, and that's it. So thank you for watching, and of course there'll be more.